partnerships across the private and public sector. As a business, Capita has around a 50-50 split of commercial and public sector clients. So what are we here to talk about today? Business process optimization. I'm going to run through our top 10 tips over the next 15-20 minutes and provide a forum to ask questions. I assure you, by the end of the session, whether it's on this session or after, we will answer all your questions. So understanding of the process. Where is the best place to start? I guess at the beginning. Understand your processes. When we say that, benchmark them against industry best practice and test their limitations. In other words, what could be better? By this I mean understand the relevance of why optimize, what is not working, what needs changing. There's a few questions, rhetorical questions if I may, on there for you to consider that I hope resonate with you. Tip 2, identify. So identify, take further analysis of the process and its goals. You can be sure that if a change is to be made, it must be made for a good reason to be accepted by your organisation. So ask yourself these questions before embarking on a process of change and optimisation. Ultimately, it may not be the case of what's broken, but what can be better and how do you create measurable improvement in your processes and the outcomes they deliver. Finally, always challenge and reflect on the why. Again, there's some questions on there just for you to ponder. Tip 3, stakeholder engagement. Self-explanatory but often underestimated. If there is just cause for opportunity to deliver optimisation, make sure that whoever the stakeholders are, they're brought into the process as early as possible. They need to know what the personal gains as well as the benefits to their team, department and organisation. It's often the case that operators and end users are driven by process optimisation that makes their daily tasks and lives easier. In contrast, senior strategic stakeholders enjoy these benefits too, but are likely to be more interested in the strategic organisational gains delivered by the optimised process. So more questions to ponder, and I think the key message here is achieving key stakeholders' buy-in as early as possible will influence the success of your project. To go on to number 4, illustrate. Going with a bit of a Blue Peter scenario here, before and after. The key elements around this is you've got a bunch of manual processes here which we're looking to optimise and automate where possible to make your processes optimal as possible. Why illustrate? Map out and illustrate the existing process in terms of its positive elements and its drawbacks to ensure that any changes made will result in visible, measurable benefits. We've gone down the Blue Peter route, like I said. Hopefully this resonates in terms of mapping out what the process looks like before and after. This will provide visual illustration for presentations and stakeholder buy-in. It will also help developers visualise what you're trying to achieve when you are translating the changes to them. So we say we've got before and after, and there's a diagram and a workflow of an optimised process, which Kelly's going to go on to later and give you a bit of demonstration around. Tip number 5, fact-based analysis and review. So you carry out your analysis and design and then test until you're satisfied the process optimised meets with your desired outcomes. This will have a far greater positive effect when presenting the benefits to senior stakeholders who are likely to want to understand the efficiency gains and ultimately want to look at what monetised benefits actually look like to the organisation. So top tip there is definitely keep testing until you're satisfied and also involve selected end users to get their feedback to help with the change process. Number 6, understand the limitations early. So whilst carrying out your planning and analysis, it's important to bear in mind that not all the tools and resources you have are necessarily fit for purpose. Whilst the people and the processes can adapt to the change in many cases, can you say the same for the software that executes the process? Consider the limitations early and decide if you can deliver your desired outcomes with your existing business systems. Again, some more points just to reflect on there. Tip 7, ensure results are measurable. So what do we mean here? Put in simple terms, how do we measure the increased improvement of the output delivered by the optimised process? That could mean a number of different outputs: time-saving efficiencies, improved compliance for audit, whatever resonates with you and your organisation, and then translating that to the how. How do you measure them? Find ways to quantify the outputs of your process optimisation. What is it delivering? Boost in productivity, time saving, cost reduction, all of the above if you're lucky. So moving on to tip 8. So here we're looking at presentation and findings, benefit and cost analysis. Within Capita here, one of the things we look at is creating a process optimisation report, which could represent a few of those items there. These will help you pull together your presentation for the senior stakeholders. They're going to want to focus on ultimately what the outcomes are and what the improvements are at the end of the process. So again, the top tip here is try to quantify the actual gain graphically for each respective process area and highlight every remedial action in terms of cost, time savings that the business is currently incurring or spending. So to tell them exactly what it looks like. Tip number 9, implement and execute. Great news, we have sign-off. Stakeholders from senior management and the select end user groups have agreed that this is the right way to move forward. You've achieved your greatness on paper, but now it's time to translate that into action. So here, a few of the key tips here and things we want to focus on is fairly basic stuff, but assign a project team, decide a go-live date, provide end-user training, and ensure communication is clear, right from start to finish and from the top-level stakeholders to your end users. In my experience here, communication is so critical in the success of any change or adaptation of process where you're optimizing and changing business process. So finally, top tip number 10, embrace progress. Final thoughts, final tip. Business process optimization has been around for a while, and optimizing current processes to manage and adapt to change driven by disruptive technology and changing markets is key. However, we're seeing a present and emerging force in robotics. So robotic process engineering is here, and it's enabling organizational functions to focus on strategy, leaving robots to manage the mundane everyday processes. In some cases, they're doing it faster, more accurately. It's something to consider, and I've put some information regarding what robotic in-process automation is, An RPA can be used to automate processes as follows below. So we're not talking about removing humans completely, which sounds a bit scary. What we're looking at is low-level tasks which are mundane and need to be done on over and over and over, like high volumes of transactions in finance. We're saying let the robots take them, and let the finance staff focus on the strategic and more operationally sensitive tasks at hand. All right then, that's enough from me. I'm going to pass you over to my colleague, so thank you very much for your time. I'm delighted to pass you over to Kelly, who will now take you through our demonstration. So over to Kelly.
Thanks, Chris. Hi everyone, I'm Kelly Lambert, and I'm going to give you a brief introduction to Integra. This will show you how you can automate your purchase process and give you instant visibility over, for instance, and the ordering process. So to start with, we'll enter an order. So I'm just going to go into an order. On the screen here, I've got my basic purchase ordering entry screen. We can also do requisitions. I've already pre-selected my buyer and requisitioner. This is just for today's purposes, but I'm going to actually enter a requisitioning point, and we'll continue with the page. As I'm going through the process, the traffic light system is in operation at the top there, so as I'm going through the screen, it will change from red to green. So on the screen here, we've got our familiar web page system going on. So let me enter an item, basically. This Integra system forces users to be to use certain catalogs and contracted items, as well as using preferred suppliers, which is of a benefit for our customers, as it allows them to control who they can buy from and what price it is actually bought from, which enables supplier efficiency, and in addition, the system also allows controlled free key ordering. So I've got my item here, so let's have a look what pops up and see how it works. So there we go, there's my item, and as you can see, it has directed me down a path. It says, okay, this is our preferred supplier. We prefer that you buy this monitor from this supplier. So I'm going to add it. It's got a price in it already. I don't have to think about it. I can just add it immediately to my basket. I've got the option to go through the other catalogs at the top there, but as this is a preferred supplier, I'm going to pick this one. So as I add it, it immediately pops up with a box, basically telling me I don't actually have budget for this item, but it will allow me to continue to order it, as it's just a warning. So I'm going to continue to order it. And let's look at a few other things on the screen here. So we can actually buy from templates, which can be shared amongst different colleagues. We can also load from other orders. So if you've bought monitors before, you could have gone to a previous order and bought it straight from the order. So just like any normal web shopping page that you would be used to, I'm just going to go into my basket now, because this is actually all I really want to order at this point in time. And then it brings up what are my list of items that I'm ordering. I've got my one item, and as you notice, the screen, the red traffic light system has turned green to the previous page. I have a chance here to change or edit this item, but I want to pay for it now and basically carry on. The system is now checked that actually I don't have a limit for £250, so that it's exceeded my authorization limit for this page, for this item. So I'm going to say yes, it needs to, I want to buy it, but now it will need to actually go for authorization, which is what is being explained on this page. So this page is explaining who I'm buying from, what the amount is for, and basically that before the purchase order can actually be created and sent to the supplier, it is going to need intervention. So I'm going to say yes, I'm happy with that. I'm going to complete the order. And the very last page now gives me an opportunity to make some comments on this order or put in some attachments. Let's put in a diary note. I want to put in a diary note because I want to just explain why I'm buying this item. So I'm just putting in a diary note, and as you probably noticed, we can actually put like 2,000 characters in here, so you could actually put a mini blog in. So I'm going to close that, and I'm now going to switch screens to my email, so we can actually see what has actually happened. Workflow is the Integra's ability to push documents and requests to users as required for the purpose of authorization, which is what we're going to go and have a look at now. And this can either be in the format of an email or a task on the desktop. This will give you better control and more visible communication with systems governed control. So let's actually have a look what's actually happened here. So in my little box here called PO intervention, I've got a request for purchase order intervention. So let's have a look what that is. So all these templates are customizable based on needs and requirements, and basically this one is saying, yes, you need to give some permission for something to be ordered. It's telling us who the supplier is and some other relevant information. At the bottom of the box here, it's got a click here to authorize, which is what I'm going to do. And it takes me straight back into my system for me to authorize. So let me have a look at this item here that I need to authorize. So I've opened up the screen, which should be now familiar, and I've got the option here to have a look at that diary note that I captured earlier and see what it says. Well, perhaps I can even add my own diary notes or my own attachments at this point in time. I've got some options on the bottom here, reject or authorize, but we live in a utopian society at the moment, so I'm going to actually authorize this order. And yes, off we go to authorize it. So now my intervention is complete, it's been authorized, and let's go and have a look what actually happened with that order. So part of the workflow process, which allows me now to pop back into this box, close this down here, go back in there, is actually automatically send our purchase orders straight to the supplier, which is fantastic because that reduces the cost of printing and posting, and it saves so much on user time, which is a great benefit to reducing overheads. So let's have a look at our purchase order. So again, fully customizable. It's information that you want to go through to the supplier, and it could also have external attachments as well. So not only has that actually happened, but at the same time, as part of the same workflow process, the person who's placed the order is also notified of the fact that their purchase order has now been approved and actually sent to the supplier. What does this do? Well, this saves on time on chasing unauthorized purchase orders around the company. So that's also a very great benefit. What I'd like to do now is go and have a look at another benefit that we have within the Integra system. So I'm going to switch back to my main system here. And we're going to have a look at how we can use the drill down process to track documents and have a look at further information. So within my favorites bar here, I have a register inquiry. I'm going to go and look through the register inquiry, and I'm pulling up one of Integra's feature-rich inquiry screens, which enables us to search on many formats, such as document types, references, company codes, a date, etc., etc. Today I'm going to look via a supplier. So I'm going to type in my supplier code and pull up my invoice that I actually want to have a look at. Somebody has raised a query regarding a purchase order, and I can't remember the purchase order number, so that's actually why I've come to look at the invoice. So here is my invoice for the Evergreen Landscapes, and I'm just going to click on it. And there's all my information regarding the invoice, and there's my attachment for an invoice. Oh, and look at that. Right next to the attachment is something called Purchase Order Inquiry. So let me go into the Purchase Order Inquiry and see what it shows us. So within the Purchase Order Inquiry, it's now giving me the full details of actually our purchase orders and anything else that we would like to see regarding that, including a diary note, which tells us that there was a purchase order intervention as well. Because did I mention we have full tracking on all these things? Anything that's changed or monitored or interfered with, like this one, it actually gets recorded within the Integra system. So you can see at any point in time what's actually happened. Plus, there are two attachments here. One, of course, is the purchase order, and the other one is actually the invoice that's actually been created from this purchase order. So this is a quick idea of what actually happens with the register inquiry. And all these attachments and diary notes I've been showing you today will be kept with the life cycle of that transaction. So the transaction stays on your system for 10 years, all that information stays there for 10 years. What I'd like to show you now is that we can track the purchase orders throughout the system and the status of them with the P2P flow, and this can be done by means of any of the reports, alerts, and Integra's wonderful dashboards that we have. So let's have a look what we've got. I was giving you a tantalizing vision earlier. Here is our home page with orders by status details. So at any point in time, I can come and see a status of all the orders that are in the system. And I've even got a daily overdue order report, which I can actually have a quick look at and just see what's actually outstanding. I then can just pop into any one of these options I've got on my home page explorer and see some of the wonderful dashboards that we have. So for instance, I've got a supplier spend by category, and I can get dashboards that are showing off-contract purchase order spend. I've also got a lovely dashboard which relates to items that Chris was speaking about earlier, and it's all about supplier efficiencies. So let's go and see what we've got there. So we've decided to monitor a whole bunch of our supplier efficiencies, and things like percentage of invoices not matched to purchase orders. We've got that for 6 months. We can actually we could actually drill down further into this and have a look and see who the main culprits are that are ordering items without a purchase order. Naughty people. And then we've got payment methods. How are people paying us for that, which is obviously something we prefer, and we've got checks, which is not so bad, and then other, which is obviously somebody's just bought us a bag of money, which is also not so bad. Then we've got low-value invoices, so we can actually have a look at what's happening with those, and things like how were invoices input into the system. What is the most efficient way of inputting invoices into the system? I would say it's scanned, OCR, XML, or an interface manual, which is the red bit here. That means that somebody has to physically capture those invoices, which is really timely and not so cost efficient. Those are just some of the benefits and efficiencies that are enjoyed by our customers with the P2P process. So thank you very much for your time today, and I'm switching you back to Anthony for Q&A.
Okay, thank you very much, Kelly. We've got some interesting questions that have come through, and thanks for everybody that's sent them through. I think this first one actually is for you, Kelly. Apologies for that. What type of solutions have you delivered using this sort of process?
eForms has been used with great success to take a lot of the manual processes within an organisation and automate them, even for non-finance related processes such as requests for car parking permits.
Okay, thanks. I'll let you have a rest. I think I'll switch over to Chris. Who typically owns business process optimisation in the organisation?
That's a good question, Natalie. I think it's quite wide and diverse depending on the nature of the business, the industry, types of process. Typical types of roles that you might come across are process and solution architects, product managers, business analysts, financial analysts, of course, within our field as well. But overall, you will have functional and department heads who are ultimately responsible for okaying those processes. Okay, great.
This one has just come in. It's actually, we've had this one 2 or 3 times, so I'll switch this one. Actually, I'll keep this one with you, Chris.
Okay.
Out of the top 10 tips, which are the most important, would you say, to take heed of?
Well, it's a good question too. I mean, again, I think all of them are very relevant. However, for me, and my experience, I'd say that the theme I kept drawing down upon throughout our session was stakeholder engagement. Can't emphasise how important that is really to make sure you've got buy-in all the way through the stages. Also, looking at measuring the results, demonstrating the improvements of the organisation. Time and time again, you see projects that are lit up at the beginning and started in its infancy. But if you fail to present the measurable improvements and results to your organisation and to your key stakeholders, linking those two together, you often fall foul, and projects, they either get put to one side or deprioritised, I suppose.
Okay, great. Back to you, I think, this one, Kelly. Can you give examples of organisations where you've optimised their business process? And I don't know how much you can give on that, but...
I won't obviously go into names, essentially, but essentially the NHS and the local government have benefited greatly from the use of the Integra workflows. In fact, the NHS helped design some of the workflows that are being used today. We also use a lot of OCR within the local government, the NHS, and other automated processes that the Integra software offers.
Kelly, I'll just jump in quickly as well, because a recent visit I had to Scotland to one of our customers has taught me a great deal about the UK port authorities and organisations, and the use of eForms that you discussed earlier has been really making some material differences in optimising their processes. So it's in both the public and the private sector we're seeing these gains.
Okay, great. I think this one, I will put this one to you, Chris. Can you guide us further after this with regards to any literature or information that's available?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have our website where we have white papers and literature that we can guide you to in the website resource centre. Other than that, as Natalie mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, any further questions, we'll take them, and if you request information, we'll send that out to you wherever relevant, and make sure you get the details you desire.
That's great. The final one, got time for, that's just come through. We've noticed on the catalogue search that it came up with several tabs with contracts prepared and the internal, external catalogue. How was this achieved?
Well, we're using, on this demo system today, we are using the full suite of Integra, which includes the ICE Catalog Expert, which helps us achieve that. You probably also noticed the punch-out option, which is another option that Integra offers as well.
Fantastic. That's great. I think that's probably all that we've got time for today. That said, if anybody would like to submit questions, please do so to ibs.marketing@capita.co.uk, and we'll get those answers over to you as quickly as possible. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope you can make it to the rest of our autumn webinar series. Thank you.